Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and I'm the streamer for this stream, and we work on Django apps on this stream. We're going to continue on one tonight and work on the onboarding milestone that I've been working towards for my homeschooling app that I'm planning to ultimately open up to other homeschooling families. This evening, what we're going to work on is the empty states, the states when there is no data for certain data models, and yet we still need to show something to the users. This is a kind of a level of polish that we're going to add that makes it so that if a brand new user starts clicking around, it feels like the app considered them before they're ready to go. So that's the plan this evening. You're free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. But otherwise, we're going to get into stuff. There's plenty of ways that you can keep up in touch with me, but the way to do that is to do my website, mattlehman.com, and you can subscribe to my email list there. I also have Twitter accounts and other ways, social accounts that you can follow me. Usually my handle is mblehman. I additionally have a Patreon that if you'd like to support me financially, if you're finding this enjoyable and worthwhile contributing financially, I'd totally appreciate that. I do want to thank my 4 patrons of Rupert and Abdulaziz, Patrick, and Eric. Thank you all for what you do and helping me out there. So let's get into it for now, shall we? And switch over to the editor. I don't know exactly which one I'm going to start on tonight, but we'll find an appropriate issue. A lot of these, as I said, are for states where there is no data for a certain page, and we want to show them something meaningful, because when the data is missing, the application doesn't have enough to really crank on and produce something that is actually telling them something. So we're going to just pick one at random, I guess, and I'll take the school years one. Why not? That seems like a good place to start. So let's do that. Let's look at the app, see what it looks like, and get to work. I'm going to start by firing up the web application server and get that going. And then we'll open it up in a browser over here. And once the browser gets loaded, I've got extra stuff that looks a little funky here because my development site has a very large CSS file to give me all of the CSS classes for my framework. It takes a little bit longer to load sometimes. That's just how it is. And as we look here, I should be, yeah, good. I'm logged in with a test account that has no data yet in a lot of places. And so this is one of the pages that we need to update to include additional information to guide people along and say, hey, you need to fill something out for this page. So the school years is a good place to start. There is definitely a call to action here, but it's not a very good one. Like, it doesn't, I mean, it's fine, but it doesn't give you any additional context of why you need to create a school year. The onboarding flow is going to guide users and explain that to them, but if they've happened to click away from that flow, I would like to be able to repeat it so that they have the benefit of seeing it on other pages. So I think what I'm going to do is take this and also look at the school year page on the onboarding flow so that I can compare the two, and I'll probably steal pretty mercilessly from the other design, because why not? I've already thought through that. So we're going to go to the Start Your School Year page, which is where this is, and we're going to replicate what is here, the information that's here, and the difference is I'm not going to put a form there. I'm going to go ahead and send a user to the Add page, which is what this button currently does. It would take them here. So the page that will be for the empty state will have the explanation, but I don't want to have like a third place where there's a form that someone could fill out a school year. I think that's a bit excessive. So that would be a good way to go. So let's get in here and figure out what we need to modify on the template. And if we go to our template and find, this is the school year list page, I think is going to be the template name, school year list. And you can see that right now it's a very primitive template. It's using a Django list view, and that's all it needed to do. So when you actually have data, it will iterate through them and do just a bulleted list of each school year that you can click on. It's not a very common page to actually come to, but it is a page that will appear when you click this button when you have no data. That's why we got sent here. This button, if you can look at the URL in the bottom corner, you can see that it says schools school year, which is a singular. That's the difference. And what that view does is it does some special lookup, and it tries to find the active school year. And in the event that there are no active school years, which is the case for a brand new user, it redirects to this page. And that's why we need to beef up this page to make it more meaningful. So let's revisit the template. And I think the way that I want to handle this is we're going to keep the school years here. And I'm going to say the way to do this is going to be an if statement. So if there's a school year list, then we want to display the existing template stuff. That stuff is fine. So we're going to move that in there and indent it a level. And now if we refresh, the button should go away because we don't have any school years. But we still have the school years label. So the other thing I want to do is take the start school year page. So it should be start school year. Yep. And we're going to take all of the flow that's in here, and I'm just going to copy and paste it into the else block on the template. And there's going to be some cleanup to rip out some form stuff that we don't need, but that's okay. And the other thing that we're going to need, we're going to be using a static image, so we're going to need the load static tag, otherwise it will error on us. Because that template tag is going to be called, and if it doesn't find the template tag, it's going to complain about, I can't find it. So that's that. The next thing we could do is include probably this whole tag. I'm just going to copy it wholesale and assume that it's everything that we need, and put it in the else block. And, whoops, that's not where I wanted it to go. Oops. Oh, silly. Come on now. There we go. And then indent that whole tag. That should get us pretty close. So now we're going to hit the else block. It's going to display a bunch of stuff, and it's pretty darn close to what I wanted to show. So we're going to change some stuff here, and this part is not going to be necessary because there won't be any school year in the context, so we can delete this little chunk. And then let's close this other one. We don't need that anymore. Now we're in a position where we can go through these and check these. So we know as well that we're not going to have the school year, so we can delete this half of the onboarding thing. And that means we're going to also need to delete the end if statement at the end, so otherwise it won't pair match appropriately. And if we do that, then no change, but it's still working. That's a good thing to check. The other thing that we want to do is delete out the form. But before I do that, there's a button there. Let's move the button for a minute, because we might want to keep the button in the same place. Let's move the button out of the form, and we might change it to a hyperlink and see if we can just keep that. But we want to delete the form elements themselves. Let's see what happens for that. Okay, that looks pretty good. The other bit to check is another one of our templates, and I've done this elsewhere. I did some of this last week as well with adding these empty states. So we want to go back and compare. And so there's a core template that we can compare against and see what that used. So that used it put it in the center. And it's already set up here. So actually, let's just take this. I don't think we need to do anything else. We might be able to get away with this. And I'll clean up the indenting in just a second. So we've got that. It's blue, which is just the color I'm going to use for all this stuff. And we'll move that out a little bit. And now we should have a button with our paragraphs. Okay, and I guess I should read the paragraphs before I actually move on, because it doesn't make sense. So it does tell us descriptively what this is, but we have to remember I'm not going to be doing the forms anymore, so we just want to have the call to action. So let's delete this extra tag right there. Now we get a single year, but I noticed immediately by doing that the spacing got a little weird. You can see that, and here's how you can tell the difference, because this one had an MB2 and this is a bottom margin of 6. So we're going to not only delete the tag, but replace the 2 with a 6 to return it to the original spacing. Give it just a little bit of breathing room. And yeah, I think that's enough. Like, this is a state that is going to be super uncommon. Your average user, if they're following the onboarding flow, is not going to ever experience this page. But as I highlighted in the last discussion of this, you could have this user that this is the first page they see. They could decide, you know what, I don't want to do any of this stuff. I want to start clicking around. And that's when they'd click the school year button and land on this page that tells them what to do if they chose to skip that. So the set of changes that we're making this evening are not a difficult set of changes. They're just a focus on polish and going through each onboarding step and make sure that we've considered all of the aspects. I think it rounds out the flow and the experience, and it's the final level of effort that I want to put onto the onboarding work before calling it done for now. Because as I mentioned last time, onboarding is something that actual users will give me much better feedback. Hey, welcome. Glad to see you here, Fatih Kokunson. Apologies if I just totally butchered your handle, but thanks for joining in. So the goal here is to fill in all these holes, and then in the future, if I have real users using the site, they'll be able to provide context about what could be made better. So we've got that particular empty state view done. We added an if-else statement to replace the old content, or put the old content in an if clause, and then the else is for the empty state. And I think I'm pretty happy with the way that it came out. It's nice to be able to copy from other onboarding work. There is an argument to be said of, why didn't I make the onboarding template into a partial that I could extract and then reuse in both places? And yeah, there's something to be said for that, but I didn't really want to, because it adds in extra complexities of where does something get posted to, and I just didn't really feel like making that all reusable. So it's okay for me to, from my point of view, to have a little bit of copying. I think that's going to be fine. So I'm going to call that good enough. So let's look at what we did. It's just a modification of one template, everything we just covered. And we're going to say, so we added the empty state for school years. And this fixes number, what was it? 260. And I stumbled across these last time. I was trying to make a point on the last stream about what empty state I need to fill in, and I started clicking buttons around like this kind of person who would have this new experience with no data, and I realized I had holes all over the place. So this has been good to discover these things and start to patch them up. All right, so let's restart the server and look at the next one. We're back on the server here, and I think that the student's view is the same sort of thing. There's two things going on here that aren't great. Is not only is there this add student button, but there's also this input scores button, which just makes zero sense. In fact, I think I need to write another issue, because it's not necessarily onboarding work, but again, if we're always trying to have some kind of consideration of the empty state, this state flow here of inputting scores is when like way later in the school year when there are assignments and graded work that needs to be completed and scores need to be entered for what my kids, how they did on whatever kind of testing that they had to do. And this is the place to enter those scores. But if there's no data, then this UI is just, I mean, I hope you'll agree that it's pretty rubbish. It doesn't tell you anything about what's missing. It at least tells you how to get out. There's an exit button which will take you somewhere, but it took you to the daily view, and it's like, well, what did that mean? Why did I go here? And so it's not a great flow right now. And on top of that, when you have no students, you absolutely have no score data because there's nothing to score yet. So this is the next one that I think it makes sense to work on. So we've ended the school year's page onboarding step, and we'll work on the students one, which I've marked down here as 259. But I'm also going to add another issue for the input scores. And I'm not going to get to that tonight because it's not related to onboarding, but empty score state for inputting scores. That'll make sense to me later, I hope. Let's see, how do I clear out the milestone? Well, whoops. I don't want a milestone, y'all. What do we do here? That switches it. There we go. Okay, GitHub had a little flaky UI there. They assumed I didn't want to actually clear out anything. So that's a new issue that we'll just ignore that one. So my issue count is back up to 28, but that's fine. We're going to clear out a bunch of these tonight. So let's switch to the students view. And the students view is going to require, well, actually no, it's not, because I have a version of the students for the app view so actually this might be one where we want to extract a reusable piece that can be used across different pages. So let's go to, we've got the web server running. Let's go to the students area and go to the, what should it be? It's the index page. My lights are flickering. Hopefully I don't lose power. It might just be the lamp. I might turn that off if it gets too annoying. So here's the students view. You can see here that it's got the buttons, and it will show student information if there are students in what I call a roster as the context variable. But we don't have a roster yet, so we're going to go put this stuff inside of an if statement for the roster and take all of this content and move it in this if statement and then indent it a little bit. And so what that will do is now when we refresh the students view, we'll have no buttons. It'll just be the students thing, but we're in a good position to add in the extra chunk. Let's return to that core app view, which I think already has the state for when you have no students. Yep, you can see it right here. So this is the piece that we want to use. Again, we're going to need the load static call to make sure that that works. But we can then take this chunk. Now, the difference this time is that this chunk is already not using a form, which, as I said, as in the last empty state, is the state that I wanted this thing to be in. So this is a reusable piece that I'd like to just recycle. So let's do it here. Let's say empty students. I don't know. That's not the greatest name, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to take that and take the chunk that's here and bring it over there. And then we need the load static call because there's a static in here. And we're going to take that and outdent it like so. So I think that has everything that I want in there. And now we need to, it's important, so I've deleted all this content, we need to make sure to include it as well. So let's add a new include and change it, the inside, it's going to be students, empty students HTML. and that should be the new partial. So in order to verify this, let's come over to this page, and we're at the create school year stuff. That's not what I want to see. So let's fudge the if statement because there's no school years. Let's just pretend that there is a school year. So it'll go to the next one. So I didn't break this. This is what I wanted to check on, that on the app page that this still appears just fine. So that's all good. And now we can take this include and go back to our list page for the index and go to, well, I guess we didn't even make the else block yet. Outdent that and put in the include. And so let's go back to the students page. It should be everything that's here minus the banner at the top. Whoops. Messed up somewhere. Oh, okay. I put it inside the for loop. That was a mistake. And great. So with a little bit of extraction, this is a little bit of refactoring work. We pulled out the empty state and recycled this. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a component. I don't think it's that, but it does make a reusable chunk, which makes this a pretty easy one to tackle. And all of these things that I'm doing tonight, we're not going to get into actually we're not going to get into very much Python code at all. I think it's going to be a lot of template work. And to that end, we're not going to be messing with unit tests. There's a lot of stuff that we get to avoid just by hanging out in template land and be a little bit of a designer mode this evening. We may get to some of that in some of the, well, it depends on how far we get. But I think that this empty state is now complete. So let's take a look at it, make sure we did everything honestly here. Pulled out this chunk of code. We put it into the include statement. We put an if statement around the existing stuff on the old template. And then we've got this new untracked file. So we can look at it again. And here's that new chunk that has load static, and so that it can load the static SVG here. I think that's cool. I think that's ready. So we added the empty state for the student's index. That's where that page was. And this fixes number, I think it was 259. Let's check. 259, cool. Another one down. All right, cool. We're cranking on it tonight. And again, if you have any questions, I see there are a couple of you in the chat. I'm happy to take your questions. This is it's sort of a light fare this evening. And it opens up the opportunity to have discussions about things. So if you got questions, send them my way. I'm more than happy to answer them. Next, we've got this one's going to be interesting. Empty state for the daily page. We might have to get down to some code changes here because I need to define what this means. And maybe that's not the one we want to work on. Empty state for an app with no enrolled students. That's another good one. Okay. Well, let's keep going. So I guess I need to pick one, huh? I think this one's going to be a little easier to tackle first. So let's do this. And that's the app view that we've been stealing from. But we'll see where this goes now. What do we need to check here? So let's break down this template and let's see if we can understand it. So there's already two states that we've covered, one that we just refactored just now. So there's the first state where you don't have any school years at all. And as a reminder, if you've never joined the stream before, this app view is the core schedule view of all of the week's data for whatever students that you might have for a school year. So you have to have a school year, and you have to have students, and you have to have those students enrolled in a school year. And without any of those pieces of data, it doesn't make sense to show you a schedule because it would just be an empty schedule. So we need to make sure that that when by the time you get to this else block, there's actually another state here. And that state is checking, I guess it's a combination of things, because there's another wrinkle in this, is that there is an edge case. And the edge case is at the school year boundaries. So here's the challenge. Some family, again, this is for homeschool families, some families might decide, hey, I've got a school year and my next school year is going to start the same week. It's unlikely that my family would do something like that, but I had to plan for it. And how do you represent that? So one way to do that would be to, in a week view, have, like, let's say the one school year ended on a Wednesday and the next school year picked up right on that Thursday. So you've got a split of 3 days for the last school year and 2 days for the next school year. One way that I could have done this was to say, well, everything is going to be in a single week's view. I have the view, if you've never seen it, is a column of the 5 separate days for a standard school week. And it lists all the classes for each student. So I thought about that approach of just kind of jamming the 2 weeks, the 2 school years together and trying to represent them in the same week. But there is a big problem. The big problem is that it would be really hard to line up who is enrolled in one school year versus the next. Let's say you have a student that is graduating high school. He or she is done with homeschool, and they have stuff in the Monday through Wednesday because they're still doing school, and Thursday and Friday they're out. They're done with school, so they're not going to appear in the Thursday and Friday schedule. It would be really hard to make sure that the actual count of students matched up. So the way I handled that is all I did was duplicate the weeks. So you'd see Monday through Friday for both, but the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for the previous school year would be in one set, and then the next school year it would be in the next set, which is why at the bottom of this template you see 2 entries. One is the schedules for the current year, and then one is the next year's schedules. So the thing that we need to check to determine if there are any enrolled students is if these schedules are empty. These schedules only have content if there actually are enrolled students. That was a lot of data. Hopefully you gathered, you followed along. So I really think that the true scenario here is we want to display this last section if and only if there are schedules, or, oh, I guess it needs to be an elif. So if there are schedules, or if there are next year schedules. So I think we can get away with not messing with the actual view code. So that should be enough. And this is about the limit of where I'll put logic in a template. This is actually, it's kind of pushing it of these 2 things together. It might be better to represent them in a view as a context variable, but I think I'm okay. I'm comfortable enough with it here that I might regret that decision later, but it feels good for now. So before moving on to the actual empty state for when there's no enrollments, let's make sure I didn't break it for when there actually is data. So I have another test account that I'll sign in here. And this is not connected anywhere on the internet, so it's just dummy data that's in my account, which is in a little SQL file on my computer. So it's nothing big. But here's where I can show you that view. And it dumped me right into the weak view. So we immediately have the answer that it's still working, because this context data here, what I listed as schedules was all of the stuff you see here. The schedules is one schedule per enrolled student, and here is one student named Mark. Here's another student named Faye, and so there's two schedules in the list, and therefore the context, the variable here has data in it, so this elif block is going to execute. So now that we have that context, we can come back to here and we can say, we can go into finally the else case. And the else case is when no one is enrolled. And that's where we want to work on next. So I'm going to check. I don't actually remember the name of that test account that I was just in. So let's go look it up from the Django admin, because this account also happens to be an admin. And so I can switch back. So app view at test.com. Okay. So we will wait for CSS to load. Again, this is not something that will affect me much on production, because this CSS file locally for development is like orders of magnitude bigger than what I use in production. Anyway, so we're going to log in as app view at testing.com, and I use the same junk password everywhere for this local account because it doesn't matter. And it should log me in. Oops. Well, I probably have to type it correctly. Oh, come on. All right, maybe I read the email address wrong. All right, let's go back to the one we were on. Hello. Well, what am I doing here? Oh, got it backwards. So it was app view, but the domain was somewhere. Okay. This is just getting silly. All right. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention, y'all. We'll get logged in, I promise. All right, so this is the account that has all the data. Let's go back and read more carefully this time. Test.com. So this will catch up in a second. Okay. We'll get back to where we were. App view at test.com. Okay. And we are on the weak view, which is where we want to be. The other bit to do here is how can we... The easiest way to test this, I think, is just going to be to comment out this stuff. It's kind of gnarly, but it's okay. We know that all those other if conditions work, so I'm not too worried about this. Actually, let's do this. Let's comment out most of them. That way I don't have to delete anything. And then, well, I guess I do have to delete a single word. Okay, so now we've got this empty space to look at. And remember, this is for the scenario when there are school years, there are students, but there's no sign that the actual students are enrolled. Good question, Stupak. It's coming along well. Thanks for asking. I've got so I think I might have mentioned this in previous streams. I don't know if you've been around, or I think you've been around before. I recall your handle. my spouse is about to start a new school year because we do our school year on the calendar year. So she's inserting a lot of the data for the upcoming school year, which will start in January. And I think I'm going to learn a ton more about the actual execution of the application. So far, she's been pleased with the data entry half of this. Oh, okay, gotcha. And she's been pleased with the data entry half, but some of the execution is going to, the proof will be in the pudding of like, it's got to work, right? Because this is how we're actually going to be driving our school year. So I'll be kind of fast and furious as the school year starts to make sure everything is going. But your comment about the Django middleware, I was able to get all that working. I actually I ended up writing up an article about it that you can go read about, because I got some bits of it working here, but there was more that I learned. So if y'all want to go read about what I did, essentially I put a blog inside of the Django app and then served it from there with some clever middleware shenanigans. Yeah, my wife might only give me one chance to get it right too. I don't know. We'll see. She does have a lot of patience with me, thankfully. So here is what I learned about all that, which you're welcome to go read about that past experience. It was a fun project. And then I guess so. This evening, what I'm doing, and other folks have been watching, is that I'm filling in these empty states for what do you do when you have no data for certain parts of the app. That's where we're at right now. And we are specifically on what do you do when no students are enrolled. So I think what I want to do is maybe have it be really close to the empty students thing that we just created. Yeah, this is for homeschooling. That's exactly right. It's for making this work for my family. So I've got kids. I'm about to have a third grader and a first grader. That's where we're at. So elementary age kids. Although I am designing a product which I do think would ultimately be for families of any age where they're doing homeschool education. So I'm going to do the worst thing in the world. I'm just going to copy. Well, not the worst, but I'm going to copy all of this content in here as is, and we're going to see how this comes out. And so this is fine. I'll reuse the same student. So I'm kind of landing on a mode where I've got a handful of SVG images to represent certain things, and I think not only based on what is available to me from Undraw, but also just like psychologically, if I can associate certain images with certain actions, like if this kind of image becomes, this is what is for a student-related functionality specifically, then I am hopeful that people will start to draw those parallels as well. Maybe not directly, maybe more subconsciously, but something that can be done too. So I'm going to recycle, all that's to say, I'm going to recycle the same image that I use for adding a student, and I'm going to describe, like you need to enroll your student in your school year. So that's what's going on here. Okay, so now we have, what do we have? Got all this stuff commented out. We don't need this anymore. And let's change the copy and also think about where do I need to send people? That's the other important aspect of this. I think I need to go look at the view because I don't actually remember if there's a school year that's accessible in the context. So let's go do that really quickly. So this is a core view. It's the main flow of the application. And we're going to go back to the top. And it's this app view here. And you can see that it gets populated with some of this data. And then it comes down to this bottom and comes into this main context area where then it populates. Oh, yeah. Yes, that was tricky with the messages and stuff. You're right. I actually, so I saw that question asked on the Django forum like today. Same basic concept of what I was dealing with, and the person wrote it a lot more clearly than I did. Why isn't there a clear method on messages? And so there's quite a thread here. So if you want to go check out the Django forum thread, here it is. Yeah, that's right. So it is something that apparently has come up for multiple people more than once. But I did throw up not only like what I did to that evening, which was this chunk of code here about deleting some stuff from cookies and but from both the request and the response, but also later on I did something. I think in that stream I talked about the possibility of just taking a template block and putting that inside of the messages loop so that the messages would be consumed by iterating, but the template block would render nothing. And that's what I ended up doing for another spot. So I ended up using both strategies. I probably should clean it up so there's only one, but that's how that landed. All right. So what do we need to say here and where do we need to go? I think I need to tell people that they need to enroll their student. And enrollment, I'll bring up the trusty models diagram. Enrollment is a pretty crucial concept. It's a concept that connects an actual student. Yeah, I'll blow it up bigger. The enrollment is the thing that connects a student to a grade level, and a grade level is the thing that's connected to the school year. So if a student is not enrolled, they are not part of a school year. So that is and enrollment's a pretty natural language to describe. Okay, we enroll people in their school years or schools, and that's pretty normal. So the copy that I'm going to use is going to actually not shy away from enrolling, because that is the thing that they need to do. So let's come down. Oh, I guess I was checking out, is a school year in the context? Dang, I didn't put the school year in the context. Well, that's a bummer. Okay. Or did I do it in some other weird way? Maybe I don't. I'm wondering if I don't need the school year. I just don't recall. Like I have some enrollment page, because there is a page that has for a student to enroll, but I don't remember what I had to pass to it. Let's go check out that actually. Let's find out. What I'm trying to do right now is determine all of the data that I actually need to put in this empty view in order to make it go. Yeah, and sadly, there it is. It requires a school year UUID, which I don't have right now. Although there's this. No, this one also requires a school year. Parents belong to a child. Isn't that the truth? In a sense, right? Feel like we're doing things for our kids. That is a weird modeling the relationship though that you're describing. That doesn't sound very accurate, but it just, as a cheeky aside, it does sound like a funny way to describe life sometimes. So we want to, in this, I think the most appropriate view that I want to send people to is probably this one, where we're enrolling a student. There is a student already. That's what is implied by this. Actually, the stuff that I've commented out. There's the elif of if you have. So you have a student. That is a precondition that will happen, because the template is checking for that. And you have a school year. So we need to have a school year in the context, but we don't know which student you want to enroll. So we can't make any assumptions there. And I don't want to put on the page, like, here are all your students you can pick from. I mean, I guess I could as an optimization someday, but that's not really what I'm going for. So in order to have the call to action button go somewhere meaningful, we have to make sure that there is a school year in the context. Let's go, let's actually stop the app for a second. We'll bring up the debug toolbar and relaunch the application, and then maybe we can poke through what is here. Well, I guess this context is not going to have anything. We might need to go back to the other app. Yeah, it just doesn't have anything worth calling out. So how can I do this? I guess there's two ways that this could be. I could either check for one variable, because it could be both a current year if you want to enroll somebody, if your time window is representing now, like your school year has already started but you haven't enrolled anybody yet, that's one particular school year. But the school year could also be in the future. That's also something that view does, which I closed. But so this view could have one of two school years possibly. And so we need to get one of those and put it in the context. And unfortunately, I've like kind of buried it in here. Well, I guess here's the variable, but I'm surprised. I'm shocked that I never took this variable and put it into the context. So what can we do about that? The assumption for this view is that there'll either be a school year in the present or the future. So I'm trying to think of like if it's going to be safe to put school year in the context or the next school year in the context is the same variable, and if we're ever going to get into a troublesome spot. Yeah, that's exactly the relationship. Grade levels belong to a school year, and the school year belongs to a school. Yep. And then grade levels have below them have courses, and then courses have tasks. So that's the whole like tree, everything that needs to be done. So I think what I want to do is if there's a school year, I want to add it to the context as the school year. If there's a future school year, I want to add the future school year to the context as the school year. So in either case, if someone gets to that page and gets to the enrollment form, they are going to get some kind of school year that they can click on and enroll their students, whether it's now or in the future. I think that's the right way to go. Okay, so all that means is that we're not quite ready to do this stuff down here yet. I'm going to leave it. Actually, I don't want to close it because, well, let's just clean it all up for the moment and return the not so I don't screw all that up. And I want to give ourselves some more room because I need to add the context that we just described, which should actually only be a couple lines of code, and then make sure that there's a test to prove that context is there, because that is important for the Python side. From my point of view, is that the context represents the contract between the template code and the actual Python code that's running, and so I want to make sure that the Python that I'm keeping track of the context variables that the templates care about. So we're going to, I'm just going to brute force it at first. We'll do, if there's a school year, then I'm going to shove it into the context as the school year. Boom. Now it's available. So that's one half. And then get next school year. Oh boy. Edge cases, man, they just really are rough. Because look at this. Check if this is the last week of the school year. So you might, all right, I'm still okay with this because this is the edge case where if it's done, if you're like the last week of the school year, you're not going to want to enroll people for a new school year. And even in that case, I don't think you'd show the schedule there. Yeah. All right. I'm comfortable with this. So we're going to come down to get next school year, and then we're going to find the next school year. And if there is the next school year, then we're going to put it into the context like so. As, not as next school year, but as school year. I think that's going to be safe-ish. Still not crazy about it, but I think it's what I want. Because I think it'll be right for most of the time for what people intend. Okay, so if that's the case, let's go to a couple of views, and I'm not working on an enrollment form right now. I've actually already done that. So there are ways to enroll. So I have the create view, and actually after I do I'm presuming that I'll be able to thread this needle, and after I put the school year into the context in the template that we're looking at, we'll go through and we'll click that. I might have to create a little data in the test account. That's okay. But we can get to a point where we can see that in action and see where that takes us. So let's go to the core test views file, and we just want one that has a school year. It's not going to be this first one because that's just checking state. These all, I probably would rework some of these. When I first wrote these tests, I kind of wrote them all so that like there's a test for each piece of context. But if you look at a lot of the tests, like has a last day, has a first day, a lot of the data setup is identical, and it's just asserting. So I could trim down the number of tests if I just changed it to like test has context and then filled it in appropriately. But I don't want to do that right now. So I want to find a reasonable spot. Well, this is a school year. Yeah, this will work. So this one is checking that the school year is for the user only. So why don't we just do this? Let's do an assert here and the assert is going to be that self get context of school year is equal to the grade level school year. Yeah, I listened to that. It sounded really like an interesting tech. Prolog, I saw that OSO itself is I think written in Prolog for the actual rules, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, or some dialect of Prolog, or something like that. It was interesting nonetheless. Right, the implementation. Yeah, you're right. So the underlying engine was written in Rust, and they made a language called Polar, which is why their thing is a bear. It's a polar bear. Whoops, where's it taking me? There it goes. I guess Polar bear, Polar, their language thing. But I thought at some point in the discussion they mentioned Prolog. Maybe it was a dialect. I don't know. It looked really cool though. I don't know that it's not a good fit for this particular project, but I did like it. It was a good discussion. Michael has some the good host on his podcast there, or good guest, I mean. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like doing dishes and stuff. I might have only half heard what they were talking about when describing Prolog and Polar. All right, let's check this test. Hey, it passes. So I've convinced myself that school year is the school year that's there. Then the other thing I want to check is that the next school year, hopefully, test a future school year. So this should have school year in here, but it should be for, this is a future dated school year. So I think it should be this school year, the one that's in this test, I mean. So we should be able to do this. And I think that should pass too. All right, I'm pretty confident of both of those. So I think that's the change that we want to make. And now I'm fairly certain that with the template that we were just in, that down here in this else statement, when there's no schedule, when it really comes to the bottom, that school year will be something that will be available, whether it's the current school year or the next one. And the URLs file that we need to go to is enrollment create is what the thing that we want to hook it up to. So we're going to change this insides and say students is the app name, and then enrollment create, and we'll pass in school year UUID. That should all be good to go now. And we'll change the template text, or the button text, to be enroll a student, like so. And then what can we do with the copy? I don't want to think too hard about this, because again, it's not going to be another one that's, I think, not going to be, it might be more commonly seen than some of the other ones, but it's not going to be super common. Let's just be as simple as possible and say you must first, or it's not first anymore, you need to enroll a student. Okay, that probably is right. And now let's treat this as if it was the real deal. So let's go make a school year so it doesn't hit this if block. Then let's make a student so it doesn't hit this if block. And then since we have no schedule, no plan, no enrolled student, it should actually fall here like I naturally would expect it to. So if I refresh this page, it should say you need to create a school year. So it's like, let's do just what would I call this? Like prompt-driven development, or prompt-driven action, follow the calls to action, I guess. So let's say create a school year, and the start date we'll say is 12/1/20 to put it right now, and we'll do it at 12/1/21 to end it, and add that school year. And well, there's stuff to do there, cool, but that's not really what I want to do right now. I want to go back to show me my week schedule, because I'm that kind of crazy person that's doing that. And now it's saying like, hey, before you can view your week schedule, you have to add a student. All right, cool. That's what I would expect. Let's go add it. And I'm going to be a little vain and just put my own name here, because who cares? And so that would add me as a student. And cool, I'm listed here now. Now, I could enroll directly from here, which an average person might do that. That's a good question. Yes and no. Like, you should be able to, so there's kind of two. Oh, you say that, I'm torn, because let me log out and show you what the week view looks like on the other one. And app view at test, that's what this one was. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. So, and that's probably you're probably anticipating feedback that my wife would give me of like, what do you mean that I can't do this? But there's a limitation here, and in how this is done. Is it the view that's presented on the week view is from the context of a student. And this is going to take longer because I've got the debug toolbar running, but you'll see that it's the schedule from the student's point of view of here are the things that they've completed. So it's not just like a generic schedule of here's what the school year could look like for any student. It is always cognizant of this student has done this amount of work, so we need to show this much as complete versus incomplete. So it's even though I do agree with you in some sense that like it should just be able to kind of show a generic view, and maybe that's a future feature that I build that kind of builds a schedule that doesn't mark any person, whether it's, well, that's saying mark by mark, any person. It just shows a generic schedule. Then yeah, that's something that could be done. But I think for this first go around, I'll probably just say you need to enroll. Right. Yeah. Students schedule. Yeah, it's probably accurate. Because the other aspect of this is the other mode is, and the way that my wife was planning this out and doing all this stuff is you don't necessarily want to have to. The whole goal of this is to do the scheduling for you, and you just do it. So the actual building of the school year is you kind of live in this space, and you go through and you build out your math class, and you add in all of, oops, clicked the wrong one. You build out your math class, and you add in all of your tasks, and you don't really care necessarily when the date is. Although I am going to ultimately put in some information about when this would be predicted to end. Like if, I'll know how many days are anticipated to be in a school year, and if each task is given a single day, then I can extrapolate out to, you've told me that you have this many vacation days or breaks, so we'll account for those, and your last task is going to be on this date because of all the work you put in there. So there's going to be that kind of planning, but the idea is just put in all of this stuff and then have the scheduling just be like an engine that kind of drives it. But it's an engine that needs the data of the students to make that proper calculation. So I definitely see your point. I think this is where we're gonna go for now, though, is to just prompt people to enroll, and somebody's ultimately going to ask me the very same question as you. Yeah, each of those math tasks is meant to be representative of a single day's worth of work, because each one will show up on the grid here as this is what you're doing for the day. Yeah, that's how it's designed so far. Because there's ways that like you could get pretty crazy about it and be like, well, I'm actually going to budget that I'm doing an hour of math a day, and then I have 2 tasks, and each one is 30 minutes, and then you could schedule that and get 2 tasks in a slot. And we just decided between my wife and I, yes, Math 2 meant second grade. That was her conventional choice to put them there, just so that she can see them. Yeah, she wanted to name them that way. I would not, but she and I are different in some ways. And I think as time goes on, she might just decide, hey, it's clear enough to see that this is for this grade. So I don't know, her conventional naming. I actually imported a lot of her data as she was building it up. So that's what you're seeing here is like an import that I did. So the stuff at the bottom here is clearly testing that I did, but everything above isn't from an import. Anyway, getting back to it, I think we're going to show the enrollment form, and or show the call to enroll, and then it will show the weekly view. So let's log out and go back to the test account that has just enough data. Yeah, it will show both kids' schedules. They'll list one after the other, or it'll be one schedule per kid. So even if you had two kids that were both in, like, let's say you had twins and they were both in 5th grade, you'd get their schedules would repeat in the weekly view because your kids might complete work at a different pace, and so not intertwining them together because of the complexities of who did what, and like you're like when you get down to like all of the data connections that actually have to go into building that schedule, it gets pretty complicated. What did I say? It was appview@test.com. Was this test account that we were just looking at? Oh, come on, I've got it this time. Maybe I just typed the password wrong. There we go. All right. Oh, great. So now we're back at the app view, and last time I just created the student that is me, or at least my name. And so we're falling through to the bottom case of the template where you have school years, so it's not this one. You have students, so it's not this one, and you don't have any schedule or next year's schedule. So you hit the else block, and it displays the copy that says you need to enroll, and then they got the enroll button. So here's what I'm going to do to verify that this is actually, that I got this logic right for this line right here with schedules. Because at least if I'm enrolled, I'm anticipating there should be one schedule there. The schedule won't have anything in it, and it'll be pretty boring to look at, but there will be a schedule. So let's enroll Matt into, oh, there's no grade level yet. Okay. What grade would I be in? I don't know. I was like, what grade would I be in? 34th grade? Something like that? No idea. I'm not quite that old, but I'm getting close. So now we've got 34th grade. Yep. And time to go back to the week view and enroll a student. And we're going to enroll Matt into 34th grade. So now we've got our school year, 34th grade. There's no content here, but we're going to go back to the week view, and here it is. So even though there's nothing to see because there's no courses, all of the necessary data is now there to kind of drive this. I mean, I guess I can, in theory, be like, you don't have any courses yet, and do that, but at some level, you just have to stop and just be like, okay, people, we've held your hand long enough. You should be able to figure out the rest, I hope. Maybe that's bullheaded of me, I don't know. But I would hope that people would be like, okay, I've got a call to action here to add a course. I'll do that. Let's say programming Rust, I don't know. And we'll add a course. And now there's the course. And read a book. And got a task. So this is the flow. Like, there's enough buttons there. And there's actually a lot of buttons on that page. I'm not super thrilled with the way that new course pages come out. It's just, I got to back off on some of the button styling, I think. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. If the schedule had, because it's kind of, if we look at it, let's go back over here. So the issue there is, were you talking about the week view, or are you talking about some of the other pages you just saw? This is Tailwind CSS. So if we look at the template context, oh, the one with 4 buttons. Okay, I'll go back there in a second. So like, there's a schedule. So, you know, in theory, like, I could get down to, if I had no data, but it was just showing the Monday through Friday, I could check if there's no courses, and then display like, you don't have any courses yet. Go go create a course and have another button there to call that out. So that's true. I could do that. And it's just a question of, are people who are setting this up going to need that level of guidance? Maybe the answer is yes, but I'm kind of at a stage where I think the app view, like, I don't want to have to drive down every little piece of data, at least not at this stage. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it right now. And I could be totally wrong on that, which is fair, but yeah, I see that point of view. So I guess the thought process here is that, well, let's go back to this initial flow. So here's why I don't want to dwell on it too much. The reason is this: in the onboarding flow, this is the first page that people see when they log in. If they follow this through, they'll have created a school year, a grade level, a grade, and a task. So by the time that they do all of that, and they don't even have a student yet, what they'll get to if they came to the week view would basically be this presentation right now. So they'd have their first task would be right here for their first course right there. And, I would have had to prompt them to create a student and enroll that student. But once they get over those hurdles, they would get to this page. And I think that would give them enough mental framework to put the rest of this together. Again, this is a pretty big assumption on my part. I'm pretty steeped in the data model, so I could be totally wrong on that data. But I think I'm ready to get some customers first before delving too much into like, what do I need to build? All right. So where does that leave us? We've got we added those bits of context for the current school year or the next one, depending on what they are, and we checked them in the test. And then we changed this to check for the schedules or next schedules, and then we added a final state that has a copy and the actual enrollment button and the static image. So let's commit this stuff. And add an empty state for unenrolled students. And that's going to fix number 256. An edit button. An edit button. Curious, can you expand on that? Edit button where? Like when there's nothing here? Because I'm definitely open for ideas here. But I think, like I said, you could have an extra if check to when I got to the courses key on the iteration of the schedule, and have and have like a create a course right here, like, or you don't have a course yet. So there's holes that we could keep like drilling down of, maybe if you have a course, but there are no tasks, that starts to get dangerous, because if you had a course but there are no tasks for a week, it doesn't necessarily mean there are no tasks at all. It could just mean that you had tasks in the past. Yeah, I see your point as a quick solution. So yeah, there's definitely polish that could be added to kind of drill down to each one and enrich the form, or enrich this view to make it kind of guide people along as they have needs. So let's mark this guy as done. And I guess before I push it up, since I did make test modifications, let's check the test real quickly. Whoa, oh. What's that? This is why we test some stuff, because otherwise I'm going to get an email from GitHub saying, you can't do that. Oh, what is it hitting? It's hitting some edge, well, it's not clearly on an edge case. It happened in 4 different scenarios. So there's a scenario. All right, well, we'll fix up these tests and then call it a night after this. It was those basic tests at the beginning that were failing. Well, all right, let's go. So what did we do? Test has first day. This was one of the ones that failed. Oh, okay. I'm calling. So enrollment create is happening, and it's not getting a school year. So there is a condition, at least in the test. I don't know if it can happen in real code, but there is a condition where the school year was not set there. All right, well, let's bring up the view. Check it out. What happened? So we got in here, and there's first day should be in that content. I mean, this test used to pass, so we can assume that the change happened in the template, such that this line would have still executed correctly. But we're getting here, and it's getting to maybe there's no school year here. I don't know. Let's check it out. None. Okay. There's no school year, and there's not going to be a next school year. But that's weird, because there's a school year right here. How does that not match? School year where there is the user's school, and that's still true. That's what that is. Oh, you know what it is? I think it is the test. Because I think it's just created a school year, but I didn't pass in any dates to this. So what's happening is it's querying its date, which is frozen in time. I mocked out the time zone function so that the date is here, and then local date has a return value of 2020-126. But this is checking that you can find a school year that includes that range. So that means that the school year factory that we need to include needs to do the start date has got to include this date we're looking at. So I think that maybe the simplest way to do that is going to be to say make it equal to the date, and then the end date be equal to start date plus a day, date time delta days equal 1. Oops. That would be now. Okay. Let's see if that little theory is right. Yeah, that was it. Okay. So we need to go replace, I think it was 4 tests with this more accurate school year. So it's really like a subtle breakage in the actual test, because I'm freezing time, and I don't think it's gonna bite me in reality. But I have an error checking tool that can keep me honest in the future. And was this one that broke too? Yeah. So there were 4 of them. So I think it was this one as well. Okay. So we can rerun the file. All right, cool. Everything's back to working. And just to make sure we see it all go happy. I'm getting to a point where I might need to start parallelizing my test suite. Well, everything worked. Actually, let's try it. Let's try parallelizing the thing, see if it works. So we'll say, yeah, you can do that in Python. You can actually do it without too much trouble. Fix the test suite. So PyTest supports it. It does require, I don't know if it's in core or if it requires a plugin. There is a plugin called xdist, but I thought that they brought that into the core. I could be wrong on that. Looking at the options, warnings collection. Yeah, all right. It appears I'm wrong, but it's a -n flag, I think. So let's take a look. PyTest xdist, and it gives you access to parallelization, and you tell it how many CPUs you want to pass to it. And that model, what that does is it the PyTest process starts up, and it does the collection. It spawns off different worker node processes and spawns them out, and then each of them does test collection. So it's a little bit redundant there, but it does the test collection, and then they all run, and then they report their results back and aggregate it all together. And it's a pretty good way to parallelize pretty quickly. So we need to put the requirements in the right spot. So I've got PyTest here. First thing I'm going to do, PyTest parallel. I have seen that one. I want to say that's an older one. I could be wrong on that. Oh, yeah, I don't know. It might be actually newer. So I'm not super well versed in it. I'll have to check it out. Let's see, what is it saying it's doing differently? Aren't thread safe? Yeah, I actually don't even know if I assume my stuff is thread safe, but I've not done any checking to test that. And I don't know. Thanks for the recommendation. I'll look at it more. But I think for now I'm going to stick with PyTest xdist just because it's one that I am familiar with and kind of know its limitations all too well. Yeah. I'll try that though. Gotcha. Yeah, so you can see there's like these a couple of options for how to load it. All right, well, let's get going here. Let's PyTest xdist 220. So let's add that PyTest xdist And we're talking like pretty aggressive optimization here because my suite is only taking 15 seconds, but why wait 15 seconds when I could do it in 4 maybe? I don't know. I think I did try this a while ago, but my suite hadn't grown large enough yet. And so the process overhead for running and doing all the setup and running all the tests was actually longer than just running it on a single core. But I might have reached a point now with the number of tests where there is benefit of actually doing multiple cores. So we're going to install it, and then we can go over here and say, I have to do this with LD flags. Don't worry about too much about what's going on there. I wonder if, yeah, I'm going to melt my computer doing this maybe. So we're going to install all the packages. Xdist should be one of them. Yep, there it is. Apparently there's some other stuff that I was missing. Oh, the other problem I don't know about is like coverage. Because I think I'm running coverage directly. Let's go to the make file. Yeah. Well, rats. This might not be as easy as I want, so I will probably see if this is even worth it, and then if it is, I will work to rework coverage. So, yeah, that's all I'll say about that for now. So we've got PyTest, and we can just run PyTest, and that'll do. Coverage is compatible, but I think because of running in parallel, I think that I have to use PyTest coverage to kind of have it merge the results back together. I could be misspeaking on that. It might work just fine. I just don't know. So here's without coverage. It's running in 11 seconds. And let's try PyTest. Now we've got Xdist installed. Let's throw 4 processors at it. I think I have 8 cores on this machine, but I don't really want everything to melt down. So it's starting up for it, and you can see there's some overhead in, I don't know if you noticed it, but there was some collection time. Yeah, and you can see, here's where it gets interesting. So even though I ran with 4 cores, it only shaved off a second. And in fact, well, let's do it with time. So this is where, PyTest even kind of lies a little bit. Yeah, we'll play with some cores. There might be different interesting timing stuff to learn. So I'm running this with time. The other aspect is I'm not running this with coverage. So it could be that the coverage was slower. It was like 15 seconds versus 11. So this took 12 seconds total. Now if we run the same thing with N4, that's going to be something different. So there is not even, it's just a half a second difference. No, it's a second and a half different that time. Okay. There's also other options that we can pass in here. There's different distribution schemes. So the way that this default one works is it is passing individual tests to individual cores. So it's kind of like doing a round robin is my understanding of it. I could be kind of wrong in my understanding, but I think it's doing a round robin where it has collected all the tests and it's saying like, you're ready. But you can imagine how that's not necessarily the most efficient approach. Instead, if we take the strategy of using one of these other ones that says do it based on modules or do it based on files, then it's going to hand it, say, run all the tests in this file. And so they're distributed that way. I don't know if that's actually going to be better, but we can check it out. see how it goes. It's certainly an easier distribution process. Oh, that was definitely better. 8.7. Curious. All right. Let's really let's melt some stuff, shall we? Yeah, it kind of pre-allocates them. Goes based on file. And then there's that other option that I don't have as much experience with, that is based on scope, like module level scope. So I don't know that one as well though. So let's try 6 cores. That one seems slower. Yeah, that one got slower. So you can see you hit some limits here. And it could be limits of my machine. But so far it seemed like the option to use 4 was pretty good. Let's do a couple tests on it and see if it actually makes sense. Eight seconds. Yeah, that's cool. Or I guess a 9.5 was what the CPU time says. I'm no doubt competing with OBS, which is trying to do video uploading right now, and I can hear my fan going pretty well. So I'm definitely fighting stuff. Also, if I run this in continuous integration (CI), I don't necessarily know how many cores those environments have. So actually, there's another option. Let's test it out. It's called Auto. And Auto tries to use all the cores. So it's going to use all 8 and kill my video. Okay, that was the slowest choice. So I think for now we'll do some hand tuning and say 4. The other question that I have about this is, I guess what's it going to do? What's it going to be like if we tried it with coverage? So as I said, there's the make coverage thing. So let's just assume that this will work as is without modifications. So let's say 4, and we'll say dist load file, as we just did. And now we're going to run with coverage on and see how it goes. And remember, coverage earlier was like 15 seconds or so. Yeah. Yep, that's what I thought. So you can see, I think what happened is coverage probably got one of the cores. Like you can see how some of these files are covered like pretty immensely. So whichever core executed the test models file probably got this one. So there's something to be said for, I think like you can add PyTest coverage to make it so that it will account for this. And let's check that out. PyTest cov or coverage? I don't know. PyTest coverage? No, it's PyTest cov. Yeah, they're even kind of hinting at how to do distributed stuff here. And yep, all right, so we're just going to install it and see if it's even the right fit. PyTest cov. And then we'll do our PyTest command from earlier with the dist load. Where'd it go? Okay, whatever. Type it again. Dist load file, and we'll pass in cov of what was my makefile doing? Homeschool. And I think that might be enough. Up to 14 seconds. Yeah. So this is the challenge. Like, it's cool to play around with parallelization options, and there's definitely a time and place. Like I did this at work, and we get massive speed ups. So that was for a test suite with 15,000 tests in it. And I just don't know that the simplicity of my setup right now, it may not make this strategy worth it. I don't. Good question. I run some of them. So I have, and you may have noticed it. Yeah, it runs. So we run like, I think we like throw 16 cores at it on a really big AWS instance when we're doing on CI to get it to a reasonable time. But you might have observed, and I'm just going to back out some of these changes. I think I've decided this project's not quite ready for xdist yet. Someday, but not today. Just not worth the headache of the extra processing and thinking about that. But what I was saying is, when I run tests, the way that I'm doing it, I'm here in Vim, right? And I'm using a keystroke to launch my test suite and run it directly from Vim and run it in like a subprocess and show me the results, and then I hit enter and I get back to Vim. So that's how I run it at work. Is of the 15,000 plus test suite unit tests that exist, I'm running 1 or 2, and it runs a little bit slower because it's in a Docker context that takes a little longer to load. But it's roughly the same sort of feel as I'm running a test at a time and watching behavior. So I'm not dealing with nearly any of the performance issue that would come from running all 15,000. But I think that's where, so it was a good thought experiment, good thing to try, get some exposure to, but I think it's not going to be the right fit for now. So where are we at? I just pushed that change, and the onboarding stuff, I'm almost done. And I don't know if I'm going to proceed with this next time or not. And yes, there are some plugins that do what you're asking. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the plugin, but there's a couple of styles, and we actually tried this at work. That there are some that can base the test runs like on, for example, some of them are able to take advantage of coverage data. So if you're able to do a run of coverage stuff, the coverage tools, especially with the new version, is able to track like this went through this line of code. So the cool part about that is, like, if you've modified that line of code, you can see how a tool could do the reverse. It could say, like, I need to run every test that went through this line of code to make sure that test still works, right? And again, I don't remember the name of that tool. I know it exists. I definitely have seen it. Was either in a podcast or I saw an article somewhere. It's really pretty cool. The challenge for like work is that we have so many tests, and that generating that coverage data for the first time is such a long process that we don't do that. We did try a strategy of basing it because we're in a Django app. For a long while, we said, like, if you've modified code in, say, the accounts Django app, only run the tests that are in the accounts directory. But that strategy ultimately didn't work quite well because we had tests that were in other areas that would affect code, and periodically we would commit stuff and stuff would break and we'd have to go fix it. So we got rid of that strategy and just replaced it with just throw a lot of computers at it and run all the tests really fast. And by throwing a big machine at it, and that seemed to solve our problem. All right, so that's where we're at. I don't know that I'll do more onboarding work in the next stream. I think y'all have probably seen enough of me filling in these empty states, and it would just be more of the same. So we will figure out what to do next. Yeah, there's some other stuff that's going on in here. Some of it's a bunch of market research, which is not really stream worthy here, but there are other bits that have been asked of me that we can start to build out, and that'll be a good plan. So Stupak, thanks for joining in. It was good chatting with you. Thanks for the good questions. I do stream just once a week on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time, because that's the time zone I'm in, and that's after my kids are asleep. So that's when I'm available. But again, thank you for joining in. I will get this content up on YouTube for anybody else that wants to view it, and have a great night. Take care.